Welcome back to the Fabienne Show. This is a great episode for you today, very inspiring about mindset. And before we begin, I want to just pause for just a moment and speak to you directly. If you have built a solid and successful business, but you secretly feel like you are the entire system, then this is an invitation for you. This Friday, January 16th, I am hosting a free half-day virtual working session that I call Scale to Seven Figures Without Burnout. And this is dedicated time for you to step out of delivery mode and into leadership mode to work on your business. You see, for 4 uninterrupted hours, you will work on your business alongside me with a guided workbook as I walk you through my 8 leverage activators. It's the framework that shows you where growth is actually coming from next without asking you to work harder or sacrifice yourself or your personal life. In this session, you are going to gain clarity on what needs to be simplified in your business, what needs to be supported, and what you no longer need to be holding alone. You will leave from this session with real decisions made, a personalized roadmap, and the kind of perspective that's almost impossible to access when you're constantly in motion trying to grow your business in between client appointments. So this isn't about hustling to 7 figures. It's about building a business that can grow without consuming you. And if you feel the nudge, you can join us for Scale to Seven Figures with your life back by going to boldheart.com/events. I will also be putting the link in the show notes. This is free. This is an opportunity for you to get to know my methodology, my heart, my community, and for us to get to know each other better before we speak. If this calls to you, go to boldheart.com/events, and I would be honored to spend that time with you. Okay, on to the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fabienne Show. I'm so delighted to have a guest today. Diana Pagano is here to talk to us about the hidden beliefs that are quietly shaping your business results. And as you know, I've been beating the drum about this for the better part of 25 years, that the results that we create on the outside are always directly correlated to the beliefs that we have on the inside, our self-image, our paradigms, how we approach life. And I'm delighted to have you here with us, Diana, to just dive deeper into this subject that I feel is primordial. It is critical to all sorts of business success. Tell us, before we dive in, a little bit about you so that we create some context for the listeners of the Fabienne Show.
Thank you, Fabienne. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Diana Pagano. As you said, I'm a keynote international speaker. I'm an author of The More Mindset, and I'm a podcast host of the Make Things Happen podcast. I'm a mom, a working mom. I've been an entrepreneur since my mid-20s. Mid to late 20s is when my journey began. I'm in my 40s now, not to date myself. I have a passion for helping people break through the mental barriers that sometimes exist, and sometimes we don't even know that they exist. There's just something holding us back.
I think it's really important to actually start there, because in my journey, not only my entrepreneurial journey, but in working with the thousands of women that I've worked with over the years, I see something that happens all the time. And it's a woman who's frustrated. She's hit a plateau. She is marketing till she's blue in the face. She's doing all the air quote right things, and it's not moving along. And there's a point at which she's either going to give up because it's not moving fast enough,
Right.
or she realizes what's really getting in the way. Let's talk about some of the hidden beliefs and what happens when somebody doesn't know to address, or even if they do know to address, doesn't choose to address what's happening on underneath the surface. So let's start there.
Absolutely. I think that's a common one. That's a great start there, Fabian. So, I mean, a lot of times, people think that they're going doing the things that they need to be doing. And then they're like a hamster in a wheel, just going in the same place and not really getting any results. And a lot of things that I've seen, and I've done a lot of research, I'm really obsessed with neuroscience, neuroplasticity, my own behavior earlier in my journey, is that everything that we're doing is based on a core fundamental belief. And sometimes it comes from generational beliefs that we've inherited and don't often realize it's a story that you were told. So now you're performing your action, or the lack of action that you're taking is based on a belief that you fundamentally have. And then it turns into this vicious cycle. So you believe that you can do this thing, and then you do the thing. And then somewhere in your journey, you hit a snag and you're like, oh, this wasn't meant to be. Or I'm
Mm.
not ready for that, or I'm not good enough to do this, or I'm not prepared, or I don't have what it takes. And then you stop. And then you see the action that produced, which is not much results, where the action that wasn't really big. How much action are you going to take when you don't have the fundamental belief that when you do X times Y, you're going to get Z, right? If you don't believe in what you're doing to the core that it's going to produce this result, the action that you take is going to be very little. And I can't tell you how many times people say, well, I've gone to the gym, I've done all these things. I said, did you? Did you go to the gym 5 days and then quit? I think the number one thing is to really, and it's hard for people to swallow, and I've been there myself, is that you look in the mirror and you say, what part have I played? Oftentimes, just by asking those questions, you identify so much of what's holding you back, because it's hard to just admit it, but you know the answers. We are always being so divinely guided, Fabienne, that if we just ask those questions, we'll uncover so much more. That's where I would start, is asking, like, what else can I do and what part have I played, and not getting the results that I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think what we're touching on here is this idea that we've especially taken on from society that says willpower is everything. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to show up. And that forcing oneself to get results is how it works. But if you understand the subconscious realm,
Mhm.
you understand that 95% of actions and behaviors come from what we really believe
Mm,
on the subconscious realm, and
100.
that the conscious realm is what leads to willpower. But that's only 5% of where our actions come from. So
Mhm.
if we are, to use your going to the gym example, if we are saying, okay, I'm going to act from my willpower, that's only going to last for 5% of your energy, which
100%.
means that you can last 3 months or 3 weeks or 3 days or maybe even 3 hours at the
Mhm.
gym or in your business, showing up, doing the things. And that early programming is what shapes our beliefs. Let's talk about what you see in your work as where the programming comes from.
Absolutely. I think we're constantly building our belief, right, Fabienne? Like, whether I was 5 years old, it was 10 years old, it was in school, it was in college, it was at 25 years old because my boyfriend told me that I would never be able to get any other relationship because of how crazy I am. Whatever it is, right? We're getting influenced by the outside world. And the reason that we get influenced on a deeper level, sometimes you're like, no, I don't. Well, who are you hanging around with? I mean, we all know that statistics has even shown that who you surround yourself most of your time, your environment becomes who you are, how you think. Your performance can actually get increased if you surround yourself with doers, with people that are doing things in their life, that are taking action, right? And so that really influences. And the reason that it influences on a scientific level is because, and I'm sure you know this, our RAS, reticular activating system, at the bottom of our brain, it's like antennas. They never stop working. They're always aware. They're always on, even when you're sleeping. So if you go to sleep with like horrible news on the TV station, that's like a disaster for your subconscious mind, right? Because that's what it's paying attention to. It doesn't know if something's hard, if something's hot, cold, it's going to burn you, you're going to keep safe. It just hears the things that you're planting, whether you think you are or not, you're hearing it. And that's what it is. It's how do you interrupt the pattern of a certain habitual way of thinking? Because there's a story that you've been told that, without this amount of money, I can't start my business. Without the credentials, without the connections, I can't get started yet. Right? That's a story. But if I'm a person that believes fundamentally I have nothing, but so many people came from nothing and made something happen, right? If I believe that opportunities just come my way because I'm open to it, now you're aligning yourself. When you
Mm.
align yourself, you're in a different playing field than just sitting there saying, I need to make this happen. I need to make this happen. But you got all this noise happening of all the reasons why you can't do this, or if you do, they're going to laugh at you or you're going to fail. There's all these things that are happening so habitually, as you said. Most of our thoughts are unconscious. How do you identify what is it that is holding you back? What I always say, what's happening in there? Sometimes people talk to me, I reveal so much just by the language that they're speaking. And I'm like, wow, if you told me this right now, I wonder what else is going on in your mind. And I'm telling you, those are the things that produce a frequency into the universe. This isn't woo woo, it's reality, it's facts backed by science. Quantum physics doesn't lie. And that's what changes our neurons in our brain chemically, right? And so people think like, oh, it's like attract likes. If I'm vibrating and I'm like, I'm going to make this thing, like you mentioned, willpower, but I'm committing myself to disciplined behavior. The thing that people often tell me is like, oh, I just don't know why I don't feel motivated. I'm like, motivation, take that off the table. First off, and Zig Ziglar said this, motivation is like showering. You got to shower every single day, right? You can't expect motivation to last forever because one minute you're motivated, the next minute you're not. It's about discipline. What action am I going to commit? It's a commitment. Whether you feel like it or not doesn't matter. And I think that when you know, like, I need to do this regardless if I feel like it or not. And trust me, it's like going to the gym. I don't know. Me personally, I see a one-on-one coach and I've been doing it for years and that's what works for me. But if I didn't, man, I wouldn't want to go to the gym myself. You know, it's accountability partner, whatever works for you. That's why having a coach is so important. But that's the biggest thing right there is that people think in their mind that, you know, when I feel motivated, I'll do the thing. And that's why they do. They take action when they're motivated and then they get results, but then other times they don't. So it's like this vicious cycle until you understand how to make that last.
Yeah. And I think the things that we are subjected to in our childhood, especially in those formative first 7 years, I want you, as you're listening to this episode, think about the messages that you experienced
Mm.
about successful people, about people who have money, about entrepreneurs that have a great impact. Did you hear things from your family, from your community, from your maybe your place of religion? Did you hear people say, oh, money doesn't grow on trees and must be nice to have a nice car, a nice house, or, rich people are greedy, sleazy, inauthentic thieves? What did you hear?
I
Because
love that.
part of what your beliefs are today, shaping your actions, are the things that you subconsciously, unconsciously picked up before the age of 7. And those are the formative years. And so I would
So true.
say a way to figure out where your beliefs got shaped is just to look at the environment in which you grew up. Would you agree with that, Diana?
I do. I do agree with that 100%. You know, my parents were struggling entrepreneurs, Fabienne, and I grew up in San Diego. Everyone's like, beautiful San Diego, California. I'm like, yeah, it's beautiful. But my upbringing was very inconsistent. We moved, and I'm not exaggerating, we moved either every year or every other year. But I
Mm.
must have lived in almost 15 places by the time I was 17. And so the reason I say that is because in my environment, my parents, you know, didn't have the consistency. They were in their own way. Self-sabotage was a real thing. And I remember my mom always saying that money was the root of all evil.
Mm.
I love my parents. They did the best
Sure.
that they knew how at that moment. But she taught me with God, all things are possible. And that one thing kind of ingrained in my head. And even in my 20s, and as my self-discovery, I started to realize, wait a minute, my brothers, I was a family of 6. I was the youngest of 4 siblings. There was 4 of us. And I remember like my brothers slept in the living room their entire childhood. Like that wasn't normal. Like I was just in my late 20s realizing that wasn't really normal. I mean, there's worse problems in the world.
Yeah.
And so I feel guilty even saying that. But I remember, you know, my mom instilled this in me with God, all things are possible. And that got me through so many things, that belief. So although money is the root of all evil, I remember thinking, like, if with God all things are possible, why do we struggle so much? And I never asked my
Mm.
mom this, but I remember just reflecting, and that was a big moment. And I think anybody listening, I think, yes, as you mentioned, your formative years, you continue to get influenced, but your first 7 years is the most impactful ones, right?
I really appreciate that you're bringing up the concept of conflicting beliefs. So, money is the root of all evil is one belief, and in God, all things are possible is another. And what I've discovered is that this is actually more common than we realize,
Very.
that we can grow up and witness differing points of view. And this mixed message can create mixed results, whereby sometimes you see people who have a very big month in their revenues in their business. And then when you notice the next month, they go down. And when I pry, as I'm sure you do with the
Yes.
people you work with, when I
Yes.
pry, I get usually a belief that, oh, that was just a fluke. This isn't going to happen. And it's these mixed results that come from mixed beliefs that were instilled as a child. And
Absolutely.
what I've come to realize, well, I mean, it's been a journey of close to 25 years working on mindset, is that unless we go back and reprogram our mindset, our subconscious, our beliefs, we will still be in that same mixed signal, mixed result loop. And I'd love to hear from you. What was it that got you thinking about mindset? Like, what was that flip of the switch? Was it a book that you read? Was it a seminar or a mentor that said to you, Diana, we need to work on your mindset and your beliefs? How did it start for you?
Yes, I grew up, I didn't really have any mentors in my 20s. It was just do or die. I was a single mom, very young entrepreneur. And I remember saying, I'm going to pursue real estate to give my kids something better than what I had growing up. That was my driver. And then, I didn't plan it the way, but I ended up having a difficult situation domestically with my husband. And so
Mhm.
we got divorced and I became a single mom. And I remember having such success. I was able to pay my mortgage and my bills for 6 months in the savings account. I'm like, I know I came from nothing. Like, this is insane. And then there was months that I Plymouth and I didn't even know how I was going to pay my electric bill. So as much
Mhm.
as I succeeded, I failed as well. And I was so afraid of having the same reality that my parents did with us kids. And so I was so driven. I'm sharing this because I was so driven based off fear of what I knew would happen. It wasn't because I had it all together. From the outside, I drove a BMW. I lived in beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona, and everyone thought like you're so successful. But on the inside, I was so broken. And I remember breaking down from just exhaustion of being on all the time and not catching a break. I didn't even know to stop and smell the roses, stop and look at what you've achieved. It was like the fast lane survival mode mindset all the way. And so I finally just had a breaking point and I was in a spiritual journey, right? I know God, like I said, was always in, part of our lives growing up. My mom would take us to church and read the Bible. And I remember there was a book called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. And then there's so many books. I mean, I could tell you that I probably read like 15 books and each one had its own unique thing. And I remember just breaking down and crying and just on my knees saying, God, I'm here. I'm here. And it wasn't until I surrendered it that I started to receive answers. And I realized, wait a second, wait a second. We can control the thoughts that we're having. Like, what do you mean thoughts? It just comes to me. But then I realized, holy cow, I am fully responsible for the failures that I've had and that I continue to repeat that, I'm fully responsible. Yes, the economy might be bad. Yes, we might have a recession. Yes, all these things. But one of the things that will never change is that you can, above it all, make a new decision, make a new choice of where you focus your attention. This isn't some woo-woo thing and positive thinking. It's deeper than that. Where you focus your attention is going to change how you feel, and the way that you feel is going to change the action that you take. Period. Right? And so, why do you think people say, make sure you do what you love, like love what you do? Because when you love what you do, you're coming from a place of loving something. That energy that comes with you being in that state is going to then give you more of those things. And that doesn't mean that you always have a kumbaya attitude 24/7, 365, right? Fabienne, we all have our moments. Sometimes we're meant to be frustrated sometimes so that we can make a change, right? But as long as we know that when the stuff hits the fan, that you have a choice. It's not the circumstance that defines you, it's your reaction to it that defines you. Because I've seen
Mhm.
so many people lose everything and bounce back like and be successful, and others lost it and never came back because of what's happening on the inside.
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing up the what you put your focus on manifests itself because I smiled when you said that. When my husband Derek and I got married 24 years ago, I actually wrote the entire vows, like the entire
Oh,
ceremony that the judge read. And I finished the entire thing with what you focus on manifests itself.
I love
I
that.
know that sounds kind of odd to weave in to your marriage,
Your vows.
not just the vows, like the entire ceremony,
Yes.
script. And that was, like 25 years ago.
Wow.
That was right after I had started my business coaching business. So it must have been a really big thing for me back then, just because I teach this too. And I just want to underline everything you're saying is
Yeah.
like what we put our attention to with intention,
Mhm.
emotion, and repetition manifests itself. And as
Absolutely.
you mentioned just a few minutes ago, it is science. It is the quantum physics, quantum mechanics.
Yes.
There are so many ways that this has been proven. If one of the things that you can do, if you would just focus on the thing that you want as opposed to the thing that you don't want, I believe that the universe rearranges itself to bring you those opportunities, to bring you those results. I'm sure that's probably what you're teaching as well.
Absolutely. I always say this, it's going off the beating of your drum. If your beating of your drum is insecurity, I'll never get the thing. I'll never get that job. I'll never move out. I'll never go on the vacation. Oh, but why wouldn't I say that, Diana? Look at my bank account. Look at my year. How can I go on that vacation? How can I move out of my parents' apartment, whatever's going on? How can I leave this marriage that's abusive? I mean, I've been there too, right?
Yeah.
It's by seeing it differently. Forget it. This is the issue. And I'm going to say this, and I say this a lot. You ask him, we just had the holidays. You ask a 7-year-old, what do you want for Christmas? And he'll go to town, making his list to Santa. And then you ask a grown woman in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 70, what do you want? And oftentimes, I cannot tell you, and for you high achievers that know what you want, that's amazing. But most of the time that I get, and I've seen this, they look at you with deer in headlights and they can't even put pen to paper what they want. There's so many things happening in here that they're so scattered, they don't even know because, again, we're focused on the reality of the situation you're in today. And this might think like, oh, what does that mean, Diana? I have to be delusional. It's not that you have to be delusional. It's about changing your focus. Today, you don't have money. Today, you're in debt. Today, you're in a bad situation. What does tomorrow look like? What can you do tomorrow? And when you ask the question, you have to pause and tell someone, and anyone listening, I would encourage you to imagine that the money wasn't the issue, the connections weren't the issue, the lack of this wasn't an issue. Don't focus on the lack. Imagine that you had a magic wand. This is where you want to be a little bit dreaming in a magic wand, and you could have anything you wanted to do in life. What would that be? Because that's what's stopping a lot of people. I've been there myself. Because when you are so in tune with reality of what your situation is, that cripples you. And it's like opening the window, even if it's just a little inch. Now you're allowing what's possible to come in. And that's where alignment comes in because you're now seeking for more. That sounds really, really funny because my book is the more mindset, but it's true. It's about you start seeking for more and you're going to find it. I mean, I don't care what religion you are, in all Bible teachings, it says, seek and you shall find. If you're seeking all the reasons you can't do it, if you're seeking the problem, if you're seeking the lack, and it might be your reality, but so what? Seek what you actually want. Seek a solution and you're going to find it. You're always going to find what you're seeking.
I have noticed that with women more than men, when asked, what is it that you really want? There's a higher percentage of women who don't know what they want. And I believe that there's huge societal thing around this where I was actually just talking to a brand new client this past week who wanted to be a certain profession when she was a young adult, and her parents convinced her to be something else. And I see this so many times. And part of what I think happens for women, especially, is that when we have the outside world tell us to do something different than what our intuition, our knowing tells us, then we question ourselves and we doubt ourselves and we don't
Yes.
trust our own knowing. And so when presented with the opportunity to say, well, what do I really want? That person will doubt themselves and say, well, I don't know what I want. And so I think that is a societal thing. But one of the
Absolutely.
things that maybe is in your book as well that I learned a long time ago from doing these mindset 3-day events for years is that for the people who don't know what they want, to actually make a two-column list of what they don't want, right? So if you don't want to live landlocked, then maybe you want to live by the sea. If you don't want poverty, that means that you want to have high cash flow. If you don't want to be single, then that may mean that you want to be in a beautiful relationship. So to actually write down what you don't want, but not so that you focus on that, you just flip to its opposite
Mm.
and putting your attention on that.
Absolutely. It's powerful.
It's really powerful. I'd love to talk a little bit more about alignment from your point of view. When you say alignment, is it a question of aligning your beliefs with your vision and your actions? What is it for you as you see it?
Absolutely. Alignment is when you are aligning yourself with the very thing that you want. So if you're saying, I want to go bigger in my business, all your thoughts about going bigger in your business have to be about X, Y, and Z, right? You have like
Mm,
categories. What are the thoughts? What are the choices, the decisions, the action that I need to be taking? Honestly, it's maintenance, right? And I talk about this in my book about change the channel. If I'm watching a channel of, I don't know, a scary movie or something, it's going to make me feel a little nervous, a little anxious. If I'm watching a comedy, it's going to make me laugh, right? Or suspense. And so your channel of focus, I think that that's the first thing, the quickest way, even from a science perspective, of changing your neurons in your brain to create those new pathways based on what's the target that I'm giving myself. And so if
right.
I want to go bigger in my business, but my channel of focus, and it's going to happen. We have over 80,000 thoughts a day. I mean, we have so many thoughts a day. And so it's not about being worried. I just had a negative thought. What do I do? It's about just catching it and being aware so that you can grab almost like the imaginary remote and change the channel so that you can get on that frequency. The more you're on that level of frequency, the more you're going to start aligning yourself with the thing that you want. So anything in life that you want requires a certain level of focus, of energy, of thought, right? And so that's the frequency that you don't see. And people don't see it physically, but it's happening. It's already happening because people don't attract what they want sometimes, but you don't attract what you want, right? You can want it all you want. You attract what you believe. And when you
Mm,
start having the language, I am capable, I am enough, I am worthy of doubling my business, I attract all the right opportunities. I help make a difference for all my clients. I am an asset to them. Oh my gosh, you're like lighting up the freaking frequency. You're lighting it up, lighting it up, lighting it up. And all of a sudden, things, people, phone calls, emails, connections start coming your way. I cannot stress this enough. It's so simplistic, but it's also very much work. Doing my hair, doing my nails, getting a massage, that takes work. That still
yeah.
takes work, but it doesn't have to be hard. It becomes fun because now you're aware.
I'd love to know for all of us listening, myself included, how do you change the channel? Because it could be simple for someone to say, "Oh, Diana, but I've got, the economy, or I've got my bank account, or the clients aren't calling, or I'm having, sales conversations, but they're not closing, and this is what's real." How do you change the channel to be in that place of positive expectation? Is it
Absolutely.
a ritual that you do in the morning? Is it a rubber band that you snap and say, "No, change that thought"? What is it for you?
Well, here's the thing. The first thing is that awareness. You're going to have thoughts that don't serve you every
Mm,
single day. I don't care if you were rest in peace, Mother Teresa had them, oh, Bill Gates, every human, I don't care how successful or not that they are. We all have thoughts that serve us and some thoughts that don't serve us. And let me tell you, the awareness happens first because our reticular activating system acts as a filter. There's parts of our brain that are supposed to keep us safe. That's how God created us. Whoever you believe in, your higher self created us to keep us safe, right?
mm,
And so, yes, back in the days, if I'm in the wilderness and a bear's coming, the fight or flight kicks in. So just to kind of go back, that's the first step to really understand how to change the channel is awareness. Because oftentimes people have even said to me that I've coached for years, like, I don't understand, like change the channel. I did it in the morning. I'm like, no, you set your intention in the morning. But that doesn't mean because you set your intention in the morning and you did your gratitude, you have to have a ritual every day. And it doesn't mean you have to be perfect. Maybe you didn't do it 2 days. Well, get back on and do it. I always start with gratitude. I always start with my intention. Today's going to be an amazing day. Today, I'm just going to have more energy than I had yesterday. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but just do it. Even if you say, I've been saying I'm going to have a great day every day and all week it's been bad, right? Because of the thoughts that come in. And so awareness is key. And that's the first part. So if I'm looking to do something and I'm not getting the results, what language am I telling myself? Man, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. Are you like, if you uncover, you get to the root, and no one has to do that homework in the instant that you're having a negative thought. When you're having a thought that doesn't serve you, you know what those are. It's like, so this is what I want everyone listening to understand. It's almost like your rescue inhaler. My son has asthma. So imagine that's what this change the channel is, a rescue inhaler. It's not meant to go deep into the root. Why are you having these thoughts? But you know what it does? It allows you to get through that difficult thought that then turns into emotional feelings and interrupts the good feelings and the frequency that you're emitting into the universe. That's what the rescue inhaler, the change the channel is, because you're now saving yourself. And the more you spend focused on the problem, focused on, I'm never going to get out of this, all the language, whatever that is, the more you're going to attract and manifest, because that's your belief. You don't attract what you want, you always attract what you believe. And so the more you tell yourself that you're strong, the more you tell yourself, I'm finding a way, the more you tell yourself something's going to happen, I'm going to continue to do this. Who else can I call? Now you're in a bucket of possibilities. That's what you're doing. So changing the channel is changing your focus so that, because people think, oh, I'm just having a negative thought, I'm just going to have a positive thought. It's not just the positive thought. It's what comes after. It's all the aftermath, the behind the scenes that's happening when you change your focus. And so changing the channel is you do it the second that you know you're spiraling out of control. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't have to be perfect.
It's almost like you become your own best friend, cheerleader, mind changer, encourager. Like, no, like if you were saying, oh, I'm so bad at this, your best friend would say, that's not true. You're really good at this. And it's really just
Yes.
about coming from that perspective and changing that channel.
There's always that little voice inside of us that will nudge us, and then there's the other side. The conscious mind is the here and now. I know that it's, Wednesday. I know that my bank account doesn't look the way I want, whatever, right? That's your conscious. Your unconscious doesn't know. It doesn't know what you're feeding. So I think there's logic and then there's the other side of our emotions. And it's like a tennis match constantly.
Mm.
I work with a lot of, in the past, I've worked with, and even now, I've worked with a lot of realists. I find to be the most fun because they really are a little challenging because they think, I'm a realist. That's just who I am. And I'm like, when did you decide that you're just a realist? Because if you're going to live in a realist world, you're never going to crack the code. You're going to just keep doing more work than you actually have to get where you want to go, period, right? And so
Yeah.
it's all beliefs. Well, I've always been shy. Always. Do you want to stay shy? Do you want to be more outgoing? Do you want to make connections, make friends? Right? And those are all going back to those beliefs. And the beautiful thing, as you know, Fabienne, that our negative thoughts that we have doesn't mean that you're doomed because you just had a negative thought. In fact, it's crazy, but when you have a positive thought, that manifests, that creates more of that frequency quicker than a negative thought. And that's why it's not about being perfect. We all have our moments. There's sometimes I lose my SHIT. There's things hit the fan. But the biggest things that the most successful humans, the most successful people out there, what they do differently, because they all have emotions, they all get mad, frustrated, is they don't stay there longer than they have to. Get it out, complain, let it out, have a purpose of why you're just let it out. Don't hold it in, right? But say words that move you forward. Instead of saying, I'm screwed, can you say, I need to find a way, even if you're upset, even if you're mad, It sounds so simple, but I'm telling you, this is my journey. This is where I started. And I started to feel delusional. I'm like, this thing says that we can control our thoughts. I'm trying it. I'm going to do this thing. And I felt a little funny. And then I
Yeah.
started to see change. And I'm like, this is no longer a coincidence.
What I'm really hearing from the thread that I'm hearing from lots of what you've discussed with us today is this concept of just consistency and discipline and just showing up, even if showing up imperfectly, even if it's not every day, just catching
Right.
yourself in the moment, being so consistent to just like course correct back to that focus, that alignment, and the fact that we are in control of our results. And I really appreciate that you shared that with us today. I'd love to hear more about your book as we're wrapping up today. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I wrote this book. I poured my entire heart and soul into this. I remember, like I said, I've read scriptures in the Bible. I've had so many amazing books, amazing authors out there. And, you know, this is my own unique perspective of what happened in my journey, how I broke those mental limits that were holding me back. Some of those I didn't even know that were holding me back. And hundreds of people that I have coached, it's actually been 15 years now that I started to do this work because I was so obsessed with my own self-discovery and transformation that I really had. And I'm like, wow. And then people would start asking me, how are you doing this? How are you doing this? And I just had such a passion that I'm like, how many others are questioning the same thing that I'm questioning?
Mhm.
I pour it all here in the more mindset, and it says break mental limits, but it doesn't have to be so negative, like break mental limits. We all have our mental things that we do, good and bad, right? And so it's not about doing more. It's about aligning yourself and becoming more of who you were meant to become. We weren't meant to live settling or having mediocre lives. We just weren't. It doesn't mean that life is going to be perfect, but when you read this book, it's going to mean that you're going to look at challenges very differently than you might be looking at it now, and it'll change your life. It'll change so much about your life in terms of how you make things happen, which is my slogan that I say.
Thank you for sharing about your book with us. I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes, everybody. Go there, grab a copy. It's coming out. Like, this is it. This is your big
Yes,
launch.
yes,
And
my
I'm
big launch, January 13th.
so very proud for you, Diana,
Thank you so
to
much.
get this big message out there. Honestly, 100% of people benefit when they start working on their beliefs and the way they show up and talk to themselves. And you're such an example of that. And I just thank you so very much for jumping on to the Fabienne Show today to share your knowledge and wisdom. And I know it's going to affect people.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
It has been fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you so much for being here. We will see you next time. Lots of love.